Before we begin, I really just wanted to give a shout out to Studio Eclipse, a fan animation company that wanted to actually animate the Berserk manga and bring it to life on YouTube. As a result of legal issues, however, this company was not able to complete the project, but I suppose now is as good a reason as ever to say, go read the manga. It's fantastic, especially if you're in any way a 40k fan. Berserk is right up your alley, especially given its grimdark nature. Hello, and welcome to Homebrew Heresy, where we bring your heretical ideas to life, taking your favorite factions and characters and translating them into 40k. I trust everyone's gotten their crying out of the way today, because today we're going to be talking about the original sad boy with a heart of gold. Well, more like a black ball of hate, self-loathing, and anxiety. Today we're covering the 100-Man Slayer, Guts. And yes, his name is just about as subtle as everyone else in 40k, so this should be pretty easy. So, as usual, we'll be covering his origins and history. Guts' story begins like most people, at their birth. However, unlike most people, he had a very unconventional birth. Born from the corpse of his own mother, the infant Guts would struggle to survive. Eventually, however, he would be saved by a slave wife of a bandit leader, and Guts would grow up beginning to see this woman as his mother. So pretty tragic so far, but I'm sure things won't get any worse. And she'd have the Black Plague. Well, I mean, things can't get any worse, right? Oh look, they just got worse. Enduring unspeakable abuse over the course of his first 10 years of life, Guts would still remain loyal to his father figure, the bandit leader Gambino, a man who showed Guts little love or respect, forcing the child to pull his weight and fight alongside them in their raids. And to make things far worse, he forced the child to wield a sword meant for a grown man. You know, not a child under the age of 10. Through both his own intensive training, the verbal and physical abuse, and his own unwillingness to give in, Guts would actually push through and become a great warrior among the bandits. However, as always, fate would kick him in the teeth and drag him back down to earth. Learning that Gambino had always hated him and wanted him dead, he would make good on that desire, literally trying to kill Guts while drunk and crippled. However, given the fact that he was drunk and crippled, Guts had a big-ass sword, so it's not too hard to figure out what happened. And even though he was defending himself, his actions would lead to his fellow bandits turning on him and trying to kill him, thereby forcing Guts to flee once again. Becoming a wandering warrior, Guts would roam the nation of Midland, solidifying his legacy as an absolute monster on the battlefield. Not because of his brilliant tactical mind or decisive military action. No, Guts just went in and kept fighting anyone who wanted smoke and only stopped when people stopped showing up. Kill enough people and eventually someone's going to take the castle. It's probably just not going to be you. It was because of Guts' legacy that he would actually be discovered by the notorious mercenary group known as the Band of the Hawk and the resident pretty boy Griffith, who unlike Magnus, did everything wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Upon meeting one another, the two fought, and with insane skill and grace, Griffith won flawlessly, defeating the wandering Guts and effectively claiming him as property. Despite initially sounding like slavery with extra steps, Guts would actually become a respectable member of the Band of the Hawk, going on to form fast friendships with numerous members and a rivalry with a passionate and intense Casca. What's funny is that this is probably the most stable and wholesome point in Guts' life, and he was probably killing way more people now than ever before. And so, over the course of the following years, Guts would reach the illustrious rank of Raid Commander, a position reserved for only the most trusted and skilled soldiers in the Band of the Hawk. He even became so necessary to Griffith's plans of attack that Griffith actually began to formulate his strategies around Guts' particularly specialized form of warfare. Look, just because it's not pretty doesn't mean it's not specialized, okay? There's delicate art to just running in with a big-ass sword and just swinging. Ironically, however, it would be on his first mission as Raid Commander that Guts would face his greatest challenge yet. Fucking Nosferatu Zod. Guts would face this absolute unit of a monster deep within the catacombs of a castle after witnessing him kill 50 of his men. Their battle was brutal and bloody, and had it not been for the intervention of Griffith alongside literal plot armor, it was likely that both of them would have died here. I shouldn't underestimate the level of badassery that was on display here though, because it was upon witnessing what Guts could do that actually had him earn Zod's respect, even if it cost him nearly every bone in his body. Still, this event proved to be a great thing for both Guts and Griffith, as it functioned as a near-death bonding experience. As any romantic comedy will tell you, those are great ways for building a relationship. However, before Griffith could achieve his goal of becoming king of a nation, he ended up actually shit-talking Guts to a girl he was trying to impress. What Griffith said to impress this woman was that he could not consider someone a friend unless they had their own goals, ambitions, and desires. And because Guts had overheard this, and he had spent most of his life as a wandering mercenary, this couldn't have been more true towards him. Realizing his supposed best friend didn't actually respect him, specifically because Guts was so loyal, he actually couldn't stand the idea of continuing to work beside him or helping him to achieve his goal. After effortlessly defeating a weakened Griffith in a duel, Guts would earn his freedom and go on to leave the Band of the Hawk, abandoning both his friends and the only person he ever actually loved, Casca. And before anyone asks why I'm not covering the love triangle between Griffith, Guts, and Casca, I don't have time for it, okay? At any rate, Guts would spend the next year wandering the world of Midland. However, during this time alone, Guts would actually learn what happened to the Band of the Hawk. Without Guts there to occupy his thoughts, Griffith would actually go on to seduce and bed a Midland princess, an action that would lead him to being captured and tortured for an entire year, becoming not just a shadow of his former self, but a walking corpse wearing his face. And just like a corpse, it will do anything to breathe again. Guts would reunite with the Band of the Hawk and come to Griffith's salvation, only to learn too late he was meant to be his sacrifice. Griffith had suffered so much and had been so broken that when fate offered him everything he ever wanted, he took it without a second thought. The Eclipse, a terrible event which saw the entire Band of the Hawk mercenary army being surrounded by demonic creatures known as apostles. Forced to fight for survival, Guts would be unable to stop Griffith from ascending to godhood or prevent his friends from being slaughtered. So what happened to Guts and Casca after this? Well, I'm happy to say they both survived. But I'm sure they both fucking wish they didn't. Awakening to find himself missing an arm, an eye, and a hell of a lot of blood, Guts would be even more horrified to learn that Casca, the woman he loved, had been so traumatized with the event that she had lost her memory. Gaining a prosthetic arm, a new suit of armor, and a big fuck-off sword, Guts would adopt the title the Apostles would learn to fear: the Black Swordsman. Returning to his roots as a wandering warrior once again, Guts would seek out the hellish apostles that had hunted and killed his friends during the Eclipse. Over the course of his journey, however, Guts would slowly begin to open up again and form new bonds with people he'd consider friends, as well as getting access to one of the coolest power-ups in fiction, the Berserk armor. And speaking of, let's get to Guts' weapons, armor, and abilities. First off, the obligatory too big to be a sword meme. The Dragon Slayer is one of the most well-known weapons in all of anime. This sword was given to Guts by a legendary blacksmith Godo, who meant for the weapon to be used to actually slay dragons. Had it not been for this weapon, Guts likely wouldn't have made it as far as he has. This weapon has actually killed so many apostles and pseudo-apostles that it can actually harm things on the astral plane. We should probably keep note of this, as we should be looking for factions or models that have a strong use of melee weapons. Next up, we have Guts' prosthetic arm. Once again forged by Godo, this mechanical arm not only provides Guts with some added strength, but also functions as a great defensive option. Not because it can block attacks with it or anything. No, it's because this weapon also has a built-in fucking hand cannon powerful enough to nearly kill apostles in one blow. And so to reflect this on a tabletop, we should probably look for weapons that can do insane damage at mid to close range. Aside from those, Guts also has access to mysterious and dangerous Berserk armor. This suit of black full-plate armor is able to protect from attacks against apostles. And of course, the primary feature of this armor is its ability to allow the user to enter a Berserk state. During this period, Guts embraces his darkest and most evil aspects from himself, losing all sense of pain and replacing it with pure anger and pushing his body to its absolute limit. What's worse is it often takes a concerted effort of the witch and newfound ally of Guts, Sheer K, to help bring him back from his bloodlust. In short, imagine combining the Pain Glove and the Butcher's Nails and you've got a rough idea of what it's like. And that allusion to the Butcher's Nails is even more accurate given the fact that the suit will literally nail the wearer's bones back together. So to bring this back to 40k, imagine combining the Pain Glove, Butcher's Nails, and the Death Guard's immortality all together. And rounding out the last bit of Guts' loadout, we have something I wouldn't exactly call an ability, but more of a curse. Following the betrayal during the Eclipse, Guts and Casca were both branded as sacrifices, meaning apostles and other supernatural forces are drawn to them. This effectively turns Guts into a big giant target and magnet for demons. And for the final ability in Guts' spell we have is most important, the ability to deny destiny. Being branded as sacrifice means that Guts should have died during the Eclipse, however as we can see he's still alive today. That's where Guts' best ability comes into play. Guts is a struggler, a title and ability which allows him to make his own destiny. Effectively, someone makes a prophecy about Guts dying, as long as he can potentially come out victorious, he will. So now we've got those figured out, we gotta cover this complex thing about Guts, his method of war. Like I mentioned before, Guts is a berserker, and like all mindless warriors who rage, he prefers to rush into the heart of the battlefield. There he uses insane speed, strength, and stubbornness to push past mortal wounds and secure victory. But not only that, Guts is also so effective at the style of warfare that others would actually modify their tactics to best build and capitalize on it. So with our weapons, armor, and abilities covered, and we know our desired method of war, we can start by building this homebrew. Starting off, I would normally give some honorable mentions, but for this video I think I'm actually going to instead do some explaining, since I know most of you are not going to agree with the conclusion I came to. So for this homebrew, I decided the faction that best suits Guts from Berserk is none other than the Eldar. If this video's end retention rate doesn't drop, I will be surprised. So on to my justification for why Guts from Berserk is actually a space elf. First and most obviously, his brand of sacrifice is a near perfect reflection of the Eldar's soul constantly being sought after by Slaanesh. Next, we gotta cover Guts' struggler ability, which involves literally changing fate. And that is exactly what the ability the Eldar have on the tabletop does. It literally allows them to change fate by re-rolling dice. Next up, we got our weapons, and to an extent, Guts' rage. So why am I mentioning the graceful space elves when I'm talking about Guts? Next up, we got the weapons, and to an extent, Guts' rage. So why am I mentioning the graceful space elves when I'm talking about rage and Guts in particular? Well, given the fact that most people don't actually understand this, it's actually been stated on numerous occasions that Eldar actually have a far greater intensity and extreme emotions than humans, meaning their capacity for anger and vengeance far exceed anything humans would be able to comprehend. Not to mention the fact that the inner darkness Guts constantly has to wrestle with isn't too different from being lost on the path of the Eldar. Okay, so what about the weapons and the Berserk armor? Well, I'll cover both of these at once and I'll answer them both with one simple answer. Wraith Blades. Yep, I bet you forgot the Eldar actually have Terminator equivalent units. But not only that, Wraith units are made up of souls recovered from the Craftworld's Infinity Circuit. And so when the soul animates a Wraith construct, they are almost always a shadow of their former selves. Not too different from what Guts becomes when he wears the Berserk armor. And speaking of, the weapons the Wraith units can wield include the Wraith Cannon, a strength fucking 14 weapon. For reference, Custodians have a toughness of 5. This thing has a weapon that is almost 3 times stronger than the toughest armor the Imperium possesses. And if melee is more your style, there's always the humble Ghost Sword, a strength 6 weapon that makes 5 attacks and shreds armor with a -2 AP. Though honestly, I think running them as a far stronger Ghost Axe and Shield would be somewhat more fitting, especially if you go the extra mile and kit bash a Greatsword onto your Ghost Axe to really fit the style. Maybe just let your opponent know you're doing that beforehand. And finally, the Eldar are a race of wandering warriors, just like how Guts himself spent a good period of his life as a wandering warrior. And while I will admit that was reaching a little bit, you can't deny that was pretty clever. But if you guys disagree with the points I made and you think Guts should be something different, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Tell me why I'm wrong, and I'll pin the one I like most. And of course, while you're down there, why don't you help a fellow struggler out and hit the like and subscribe button. Help me defy fate and get to 1,000 subscribers. Craftworld Laderag is notorious among the Asuryani for their ruthless temper, fiery passions, and tendency to succumb to the path of the warrior, a fact that has given rise to the cruel nickname, the Exarch World. While insulting, this ignoble tale does not present the true face of the Eldari of the Craftworld Laderag. This Craftworld possesses the Wraith Hunters, otherwise known as the Duran Mashan, or the Black Wraiths. These horrifying variants of the traditional Wraith forces are seen with both disgust and sorrow by all who witness their existence. Created from the soul stones of exarchs who have never joined the Craftworld's Infinity Circuits, these individuals fight with a barbarous and almost berserk mentality. As the twin madnesses of being both lost on the path as well as being revived from death have twisted these warrior spirits into something far crueler and without mercy. The Craftworld Laderag was, during the height of the Eldar Empire, a humble and often disregarded world ship. The population of this Craftworld was made up of those who found themselves exiled, willingly or otherwise, from the degrading Eldari Empire. Acting as a mercenary force, this Craftworld would fight the battles the rest of the race ignored or refused to fight. Believing themselves to be securing a place for their people, they may have in fact been slowly adding to its eventual collapse. As without major threats to face or seeing their way of life challenged, the Eldari Empire would eventually give rise to She Who Thirsts. What's worse, Craftworld Laderag was there at the site of her birth. As the explosion of psychic power overtook them, the demons of Slaanesh ravaged the population on board. Had it not been for their already militaristic nature and refusal to succumb to Slaanesh's temptations, the Eldar of Laderag would not have been able to fight their way out. In the time since the fall, Laderag has carved out a name for themselves as one of the most brutal and violent Craftworlds. Currently, Craftworld Laderag has been seen attacking their fellow Eldari, the Ynnari, believing the cult of Ynit to serve no other purpose than to end all of the Eldar, effectively offering the last of the Aesir up as a sacrifice. And so the force of Laderag reject Ynnari, and seek to forge their own destiny, even if it means struggling against fate to do it. And there you have it, Craftworld Laderag. And 10 points to anyone who can answer where I got that name from in the comments below. I just hope I'm pronouncing it properly. So with the lore out of the way, we can begin by putting this army together on the tabletop. And as always, we'll be aiming for the 500 point mark. So let's look at what we're going to be needing for this. And fair warning, we're going to be dealing with a lot of Wraith units, so this army will not be cheap. So for our first and most obvious choice, we're going to be buying 2 boxes of Wraith units for $62 each. Together, these give us a total of 340 points for about $124. As I mentioned before, these Wraith Blade units will serve as a perfect frontline aggressor. Plus their ability Malevolent Soul sounds a lot like a Berserker Revenge ability. Mostly because it is. Upon dying, that model is able to make one final attempt to take down the enemy, attacking as if it was in the fight phase. These are a pretty insane unit, and honestly, if I could, I'd say buy as many as you can for good measure, if it didn't push us over the points limit or leave us without an HQ option. Storm Guardians are Eldar who have already walked the path of the warrior but have completed their path and have now returned to civilian life. However, during times of conflict, they don the war mask and take the fight to the enemy. This unit can also work as a stand-in for Guts at his younger age, given their use of aggressive fighting style and heavy use of melee weapons. So with the Storm Guardians, we're actually adding an extra 100 points to our list, giving us a grand total of 440 points in total. So far, we're pretty close to that 500 point mark. We're just missing that one thing, a leader unit. And if I'm going to be honest, this final part was actually the part I was struggling with the most while writing this script. Guts isn't much of a leader, he's more of a reluctant protector. And so, to be honest, choosing who I wanted to lead this army was pretty difficult. That being said though, I did ultimately decide to go with the Spirit Seer. And to be honest, I only chose the Spirit Seer because they're the only ones who can lead the Wraithblade unit. That being said though, we're nothing if not crafty. So let's say the Spirit Seer, whose in canon duty it is to speak to and revive Wraith units, can actually function as a proxy for Shirke. I know I said this video was building Guts, but without someone to actually bring us back from a Berserker rage, we're nothing but a force of nature. And something with no character. And together, this little force of ours gives us a total of 505 points. We're still over the 500 point limit, but just barely. And once again, I doubt anyone is really going to fight you over 5 points. So in terms of models, we've got our army. But what about our rules? Well, unfortunately, because the Eldar are, at this point, one of the armies who have yet to receive their 10th edition codex, there aren't very many options for rules. So far, only the detachment ability known as Unparalleled Foresight is available to Eldar armies. Luckily for us, it's a pretty generic reroll, 1 hit roll, and 1 rune roll. Something we can easily say is a stand-in for Guts' Berserker Rage, boosting his combat ability. Overall, I bet this homebrew worked out a lot better than most of you probably expected, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it. If you guys made it to the end, why not tell me who you guys want me to cover in my next video? Your options are Vi from Arcane, the Titans from Titanfall, and the Stormtroopers from Star Wars. Tell me who you want me to cover in the comment section below. And while you're here, why not check out another one of my videos? Maybe set up your own little crossover battle between Guts from Berserk and the Xenomorph from Alien. Otherwise, I've got nothing else to say. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Bye!